Donald Trump was defeated in the 2020 election, but American democracy is still under threat, and Trump is doing everything he can to force his way back into the White House in 2024. We in the pro-democracy movement have a lot of work left to do, and with your help, we'll defeat Trump, MAGA, and the plans they have for America. I'm Reed Galen, co-founder of the Lincoln Project and host of the Lincoln Project podcast. In each episode, we feature political experts, activists, and thought leaders who are working to stamp out Trumpism and the seditionists who continue to back him. We discuss today's political challenges, our vision for the future, and how every American can be part of the pro-democracy movement. So join me on the next episode of the Lincoln Project podcast, available on your favorite podcast app.
Welcome to the American Resolution Podcast, the show about problems and solutions. Coming up, we are diving headfirst into the ever-changing abortion laws. But don't worry, we've got a solution that's as sky high as Don Jr. We're talking with the co-founder of Elevated Access, Mike Bonanza, about how his network of pilots are helping people get the health care they need. I'm television host, political commentator, and comedian Heather Gardner. Thank you for joining us. But first, I am so excited. We have political influencer, host of the Are You Effing Kidding Me podcast. And guys, she is so famous that SNL spoofed her. Don't sit here and pretend you're not shocked. Like, dude, that was insane.
Blogger and political activist. And I want to talk to you. Joanne Carducci.
All right, we have got Jo Carducci, better known by her gangster name as JoJoFromJerz.
Hi, Heather. Oh my God, I'm so excited. I love you. You know I'm a girl.
Well, first of all, since we're here, we might as well talk about it. How crazy was it? Did you wake up to text messages being like, Jo, you're on SNL?
It was weirder than that because for some strange reason, I was up with the kids who are almost 11 and 14. They're not babies. They're late. Obviously, it's after midnight. Yeah. And because I'm a weirdo, I was doing my abs. I was going to do abs at midnight. I'm such a freaking weirdo. They're on their phones and I'm like, hello, let's do abs. And then I get a text message from Brooklyn Dad Defiant. He's a real person,
Oh yeah, I know.
So he says, hey, Jo, I think you're on SNL. And I was like, no, I'm in New Jersey. And no, I'm not on SNL. Right? I thought it was
that's the most mom answer ever. You're like, no, I'm not.
Yeah, it's even more mom and Gen X-y because I said, are you trying to prank me? And he sends me a screenshot of my name in the closed captioning. So I was like, oh, duh. I said, it's the Barry Gibb talk show. Your TV probably couldn't understand them and captioned it with my name because I'm in your contacts on your phone. And he's like, no.
You were just in disbelief.
I couldn't turn it on because I thought I had died. I was convinced that I had actually died because no part of my brain could make sense of what he was telling me. And then other people started texting me with videos of them singing my name.
So Joanne Carducci. Joanne Carducci.
I just looked at my kids and I said, did I die? Am I here, Ed? Did this happen? Because it can't have happened. And I went through waves of that where I was like, this is something wrong. This is not possible. And it's still, to this day, when I go back and revisit it, it doesn't make any sense. It's just too surreal, completely surreal.
But also so fun and just a testament to how much of an influence that you are making in this space. So we haven't had a moment to celebrate this, Jo, and I'm just going to celebrate this right now. All right, should we get into our conversation starter?
Yes, please, let's do it.
Conversation starter.
Have screens destroyed teens? JoJo, I wanted to talk to you about this because I'm not a mother. You are a mother of teenagers. And there's a lot of very scary headlines out there. And I just want to know if you feel the same angst and dread as some of these headlines. I need to read them for you, okay? CNN, this one may be my favorite. How cell phones are killing our kids. Yeah. And then I also really like this one from the LA Times. Flaming hot Cheetos and iPhones are ruining my kids and yours.
That's an interesting. The flaming hot Cheetos part, it's not too.
That's the one you're more concerned about.
No,
excellent.
Yeah.
Do you feel the same level of the world is falling apart over screen time for your kids?
It's going to sound crazy coming from somebody who, like, my entire life changed because of social media. It's something that sustains my existence and feeds and houses my kids. But I would be lying to you if I told you that I wasn't gravely concerned about the impact of all of this on them, especially these kids coupled with COVID. And they were really locked in without human interaction for a very pivotal time in their lives. And they're not physiologically or emotionally able to dissect and digest what they're being shown, what they're being fed, what's being modeled, what they're being told. I will say all of that is, like I said, concerning, but it's not hopeless.
Good, because you're making me foul. I'm like, oh my God, okay, we're all going to die.
I mean, yes. At the end of the day, it comes down to us. It comes down to me. It comes down to their dad. It comes down to the people who love them. It comes down to their teachers and how we help them navigate this space. And especially when it comes to the disinformation, which my son is now engaging with and identifying for me, which is great because he's having these conversations with me and gives me a chance to help him navigate the truth. And then for my daughter, she's almost 11, I have to help her navigate the messages about her body and about what she should look like and what about the expectations that she should look like are. So it's similar to what we've always experienced in terms of societal pressures on teens, taken and amplified to the 100th degree and compressed down onto them 24/7, 365. But we can help them.
But here's the thing. Are we equipped, our generations, because eventually maybe I'll have kids and maybe they'll invent something different than smartphones for me to worry about by then. But we didn't grow up with this stuff. I mean, you could always just not buy the magazine.
Yeah.
You could always just turn off the television or turn off the channel. There was only a finite amount of access that you could have or your kids could have. But now it's infinite. Do you feel equipped?
I mean, I would say I'm more intimidated by the new math that my kids had to do. That was a language I didn't speak. Much more intimidated.
Math is hard.
Fair.
What again gives me some sense of hope here is that the core issues are still the same. They're evergreen. They're timeless. They don't really change. I mean, they evolve. And of course, there's nuances to it. But at the end of the day, it's still about your connection to those children and the way that you love them and show them love, that you're there to help navigate it with them, even if it's something that you haven't navigated yourself. It always comes back to those core issues of showing them love and support and building them up and not tearing them down.
See, that's one of the reasons why I kind of had to laugh at some of these headlines, too, because it does seem like hyperbole to say we've destroyed a generation. But when you say it like that, we've always had body issues. It just, was in a different way. We've always had attention issues. It was just in a different way. We've always tried to feed our kids broccoli at every single meal, and it doesn't always work out. I like that you, a parent, are putting it into that perspective for me because, you look at some of this stuff and you're just like, well, we're all doomed. All right, let's pull a plug.
It's really important, though, in that same conversation to identify how the nuances are different, right? So like to identify what it is like for a 14-year-old boy to play a game like Fortnite and for him to be able to dance his way into like a battle victory. And
wait, is that what Fortnite is?
I guess. I honestly, it's like, for me, it's just like dressing their dolls up on a screen and making them shoot each other and dance. I don't really know.
That's so funny.
I fully advocate for therapy. I go to therapy. My kids both go to therapy. It has been incredibly important and valuable to us as a family. One of the things my therapist identified for me related to games like that is that for a 14 or 12 or 11 or whatever age boys in particular, because their frontal lobes form later and differently than females, something like that teaches them this instantaneous gratification sort of scenario that is wildly like disconnected from reality. And what we've seen actually in society is when that's not really addressed and it's not taken on head on first, we can get like a Charlie Kirk, you know what I mean? We can get like these, for real, like these dudes, who are out there like, I want a woman, I want a lady, and I want her to just come to me. And like, she's not.
And I see these clips of him and I was like, I just feel so bad for his wife when he's like, guys, you got to be an alpha man. I'm like, who are you talking about? Who are you talking to?
He said that women in their mid-30s are past their prime.
In their early 30s, they get really upset because they say, the boys don't want to date me anymore because they're not at their prime. And people get mad when I say that. Well, it's just true. If you're in your early 30s, I'm sorry. It's like you're not as attractive in the dating pool.
He married his wife when she was in her mid-30s.
This poor woman. Right. She needs to start blinking. We need to get her out of there. Blink twice for help. We can talk about limiting screen time and, staying off social media and, has it really destroyed a generation? Who's to say? They'll tell us later.
Right, exactly.
We'll get it from their therapist later. But then this actually really, really shocked me. There was a worldwide study that they do in 80 different countries, and they study the test scores of 15-year-olds. And they've done this for a few decades now. And what they have found since 2012, around the time the smartphone came out, test scores across the board have just plummeted. Maybe this is, comforting to you. Maybe it's a little more scary than we want to admit. But this is a worldwide problem. This isn't necessarily just an American problem.
True. And when you think about it, right, think about when we were young, when we were kids. Well, I'm so old that the internet itself did not exist when I started college.
That's okay. I'm old enough too.
Yeah.
So I'm right there with you, girl.
When I went to Emerson, I remember going to the library and it was like, it was like, what is this? What is this? What is this? Web? What is this? Internet? We had to open books. We had to use our brains and our cognitive ability. We had to work to find information. We had to seek it out. It wasn't like something we could just click a button and automatically download. And also, that information was curated in a very specific and well-vetted way. While now, what you see is that not only do they not have to put in any effort whatsoever to squeeze information out of the sky at a moment's notice, the information they're squeezing out of the sky could be coming from some dude in his basement, right? Like, to borrow that whole scenario, who's just making stuff up.
Or Charlie Kirk.
Right, exactly. Could be Charlie Kirk. Could be Charlie Kirk. And so there is this global dumbing down, but also de-incentivizing people to do more due diligence because it's just easier. And that's not exclusively an American thing. That is a human thing where we're like, I don't want things to be harder. I want things to be easier. And so that study makes total sense to me. It really does.
If we're going to talk about solutions, because there have been some, I want to say radical, because I don't think just putting your phone away while you're at school is some radical idea. However, to a kid who's only ever had their iPad or their phone, this may seem a bit radical to them. But there are schools across the world and in our country that have just put the phones away, and they've seen a lot of success. Florida is taking a different approach. They are just banning social media for any kid under 14. Not sure how that's going to fly constitutionally, but it is something that they are exploring.
We have to have some kind of pushback. I mean, we've gone so far over the cliff now, it's going to be nearly impossible to pull back. It's almost like Jurassic Park.
They're so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
And we are going to have to put some measures in place that are not violating fundamental rights. But I don't think it's a terrible idea for a school to say, like, you have to use these means to find your research. You have to use an actual book. You have to use actual pen and paper.
JoJo from Jerz, tell the people where they can find you.
Well, I'm right here in my house in New Jersey at the moment, but don't come here now.
You want to give an address? Yeah. I highly recommend against that.
No, and please don't bring a hammer, okay? That's my worst fear. But yeah, you can find me on all the socials at JoJoFromJerz, except for Instagram, because somebody's out there with that name, so it's JoJo.fromJerz. I've got my podcast, Are You Effing Kidding Me? And then I have a Substack, my baby of the same name, the Are You Effing Kidding Me Substack. That is my labor of love. It is truly the cathartic for me. It's my happy place.
Y'all, when I was on JoJo's podcast, she literally spent 20 minutes trying to convince me to get a Substack. And I haven't done it yet, but you know what? It's on my list of a million things to do.
With the launch of your new podcast and everything like you're doing and all the projects that you're working on and your personality and your wit and your insight. And the people over there are incredible. You would be a great fit. You would be a great fit.
Thank you so much, Jo. Yay. Have fun hanging out with your kids. Limit that screen time as much as, you're the parent. Don't listen to me. I know nothing, okay?
Yeah. Well, when I let them out of their cages, I give them their requisite 5 minutes a day. And then I put them right to work and I make them scrub the toilets and then cook the meth. That's the important part, is that the meth has to get me. Children. Mommy needs the meth, okay? The meth is going to make itself.
JoJo from Breaking Bad. That's your new name. I love you so much, Jo. Have a great day.
You too.
All right, welcome back to the American Resolution. And in an effort to keep this podcast light and uplifting, we're talking about solutions after all, this week we're going to dive deep into abortion access? Wait, that's what we landed on? Is it too late to abort?
Abort. Abort. Abort.
I guess it would be in Texas. Let's go to the Supreme Court, where I'm sure nothing outrageous has happened recently.
Today, the Supreme Court is debating how many organs it's okay for you to lose before an ER doctor can provide you life-saving abortion care. I wish I was kidding, but I'm not.
At issue, does a federal law mandating emergency care for those in need mean hospitals must provide abortion access if a woman's health is at risk?
Oh my God! When they said pro-life, I didn't think they meant pro-not dead yet. Their lawyers basically argued.
Mostly dead. He's slightly alive.
And apparently that's good enough for them. But this is the post-Roe America we've found ourselves in since 2022. Because not only have we seen a barrage of laws limiting abortion,
a new abortion law goes into effect today in
the
Florida.
Strictest abortion law
Texas's abortion trigger law.
South Carolina becoming the latest state.
Mississippi's abortion trigger ban goes into effect.
Any stage of pregnancy will be punishable by 10 to 99 years or life in prison.
We've also seen the trickle-down consequences. Turns out, pro-lifers really grabbed Pandora by the box.
An exodus of providers from banned states could leave residents without access to not only abortion care, but also a range of still legal reproductive health services like birth control, prenatal care, and emergency life-saving abortions exempt from most bans.
A third of Indiana counties don't have a delivery hospital, hitting rural counties the hardest.
Doctors in the state are deeply fearful of retribution. They are going against best practices, forced to wait until their life is at risk to receive care. Treatment for ectopic pregnancies and non-viable pregnancies are being withheld.
And even those who desperately want a family but struggle with fertility have been affected.
A third fertility clinic has now shut off IVF services because of the Alabama Supreme Court ruling in that state.
All right, this episode is going to be a little different because as much as I wish I could tell you that a person way smarter than us has figured out a way to restore our rights, as far as I know, no one's invented a time machine just yet. And even if they did, do you really think their first stop would be going back a mere 2 years to stop a Supreme Court ruling? Boring. No. They'd totally go back in time and almost bang their mom.
Doc, are you trying to tell me that my mother has got the hots for me? Precisely.
But I fear the real solution is just as boring. Option 1. A Democrat in the Oval Office paired with a Democrat-controlled House and 60 Democratic senators. In these divided states of America, okay, don't hold your breath. And option 2, remaking the Supreme Court by replacing 2 conservative justices. Clarence Thomas is 75, Samuel Alito is 74, and well...
That's what old people do, they die.
It's gonna happen at some point, that's all I'm saying. So with the true solution reliant on father time or a very specific set of electoral outcomes, we thought we'd focus this episode on what's being done in the interim. We spoke with Mike Bonanza, co-founder of Elevated Access, a network of volunteer pilots that help people obtain health care by flying them from areas that have become reproductive care deserts into places where they can get the procedures they need. And I think Mike does a better job of explaining how and why this organization exists than I ever could, so I'm gonna let him do that. But the biggest thing I took away from our chat, and what I hope sticks with you, is Mike's optimism in the truly depressing situation that America has found itself in. And from the very start of our conversation, I was blown away. I think you're gonna understand why. I'm not gonna lie, when I first saw this, I was shocked. 1, that something like this needs to exist, but 2, that you managed to grow something like this. Talk to me about Elevated Access and the services you provide.
We're an organization of volunteer pilots that flies people to get access to abortion and gender-affirming care when they can't get it in their own communities. Volunteer pilots flying people to get access to healthcare has actually been something that's going on for over 30 years. A lot of organizations that are flying people to get access to cancer treatment or to go to specialized healthcare facilities, or even animal rescue and other things. And it was in learning about how so much of the anti-abortion movement, its greatest impact is on people of color, people of low incomes, and others, that it very much spoke to me as a social justice issue. And so I started doing some of the homework to figure out whether pilots might be able to help.
Okay, let's back up for 1 second. I did not know that there were organizations that did this for all kinds of things, like cancer treatments. I was already feeling really bad about America's healthcare system, and you're bringing me way back down. Like the fact that this needs to exist, I think is such a huge flaw in our system. If you're watching this on video, you probably notice that Mike here is blurred out. There's a specific reason for this. Explain that reason, Mike.
First is kind of the obvious that working in the abortion movement and even around trans rights issues right now, there's a lot of dangerous people out there that make threats and other things. And so, I do that to protect myself and especially my family. Really, almost the bigger reason is that as a white person, a man, I have a lot of privilege. So I do this partly too to make sure that we're centering the people that we're helping.
Well, Mike, it's kind of a shame that we have to blur your face. Y'all, I can confirm he's got a very nice face.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Walk us through this process from getting a call, or is it a text or an email or some sort of notification that someone needs help, and then to that person actually getting the help.
We work primarily by referral. So for somebody who's an abortion seeker, that they're typically starting with, maybe asking the clinic where they've scheduled an appointment. And for a lot of people, that might be 2 or 3 states away, might be hundreds of miles away, and they'll ask that clinic for resources. And most clinics have relationships with what we call practical support organizations. And those practical support organizations will arrange travel for people, provide lodging, money for childcare, food, all those kinds of things. Because if you're somebody who's living paycheck to paycheck, living on minimum wage, any resources they might need, be able to get from where they are to where that care is. Because for many people, especially in the Southeast, in the South, as well as a lot of other parts of the country, they might have to travel a very long distance. And so if somebody doesn't have a car that can drive 5 hours, and I certainly, when I was younger, had a car I wouldn't trust to drive that far, I would have needed resources, to get somewhere. And they'll send a referral over to us if they think our volunteer pilots might be the right fit for it. We connect the passenger and the pilot together so they can figure out what time they're going to meet, where they're going to meet at the airport, because where you fly for this is not the same place you would go to for airlines, and figure out how they're going to recognize each other, because obviously they're going to be strangers when they meet for the first time.
Do the patients themselves pay for this, or does the organizations help them? How do they get that kind of money?
This is all paid for by the pilots. So the pilots pay for the flight costs, pays for the fuel, the time on the aircraft, any other expenses that might be involved. And our pilots, much like me, have this resource and skill that they want to use to help people. And so that's what they're doing. We are working on a program to be able to reimburse them for fuel, but it requires an approval process from the FAA. And as you can imagine, a big federal bureaucracy takes time to get things done.
Let's talk about the network of pilots that you had. I was blown away that you had this idea in the first place, but also people that are doing this out of the goodness of their hearts. How many pilots do you have?
So we have over 1,400 pilots that have said they want to be in our network.
1,400 pilots? That's insane. In a good way.
It is insane in a good way, because we're coming up on our 2-year anniversary. And 2 years ago, it was myself and 2 other pilots. And I was seeing the Dobbs decision coming down the road and knew exactly what was going to happen. And I was like, we got to have more pilots. And so thankfully, we had some very early on viral social media that took us from 3 to then by the end of May of 2022, we had like 200. By the time the Dobbs decision came out, I think we got another 500 just that weekend.
Jeez.
And it's been just constant since then. We've flown in and out of 43 states plus DC so far.
I was watching one of your videos. They pointed out something that I did not even know.
A pilot can take off from any airport, and for the most part, without even talking to air traffic control, without having to file a flight plan, without having to get any sort of governmental approval, take off in their plane and fly to any one of these thousands of airports around the country.
I'm not a pilot. I've never been on a private jet. I'm like a Spirit Airlines girly. I'm just cheap like that. That's all.
Nothing wrong with that.
Right. Well, I did not realize that there were so many private airports that you guys can just zip in and out of.
Yeah. Just about every county in the country has an airport. I still remember one of the first flights that I did. I was with the passengers and they had called their Uber. Well, the driver called them and I'm like, that's weird. Normally Uber drivers don't call you.
Right.
And the Uber driver wouldn't believe them. They were at an airport because they had lived in that town for years and didn't know there was an airport there. So a lot of people don't even realize that there are these small airports right in their neighborhood.
Yeah, I didn't either. Going back for a second about, the reasons why we're blurring your faces and the laws here. When we talk about healthcare access and specifically abortion access, I think a lot of people miss the fact that we're not just talking about the act itself, the abortion itself. There are so many states trying to restrict exactly what you're doing. You are helping people.
And after Texas's near total abortion ban, some local governments are enacting including even stricter provisions on women seeking abortions. Lubbock County became the largest area to prohibit traveling for an abortion.
Republicans in Idaho are set to ban interstate travel for abortion.
We've seen people, the police called for miscarriages at this point. Like, we've seen people have their Facebook messages being turned over to the police. Do you feel like your pilots, did they have a sense that they're safe in doing this? Or are you watching the news like really closely to be sure that what you're doing remains legal?
Yeah, so it's obviously a complex thing. We can be pretty confident that where we stand today, the way we do our work and the way we approach our work, that everything we're doing is legal. But our attorneys also tell us, like, because of the activism within the court system right now, it'll really depend on which judge we get in front of. So even though like a Texas law could be said to be unconstitutional, there's no faith to be had in the system because it really will come down to what judge is there. The laws don't exist yet that ban the work that we're doing. But we also do a lot of things to help protect ourselves and to protect the pilots, especially, as well as the passengers. When our partners refer a passenger to us, we don't ask them for. In fact, we tell them we don't want to know why they're traveling because it's not relevant. We trust them to make whatever decisions they're going to make. And then when we talk with our pilots, we don't know why the person's traveling, so we don't have that information to give them. But then we also don't tell them the name of the partner organization, so they can't infer the purpose of somebody's travel. All that level of plausible deniability is there, although, like our lawyers tell us, great defense 10 years ago, who knows what happens today.
I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's not illegal yet. And that is just such a scary thing because I think when Dobbs fell 2 years ago, I never thought that was going to be the end. I had a sense in being in politics for the last several years, understanding that it took them 50 years to get to this point. And I never believed that they were just going to be like, okay, done. The fact that these laws are ever changing and they are ever more confusing. Every state is different. It's legal for you to do this now, but I think you just said it. It's not illegal yet. We just don't know.
I mean, I want to just be angry and frustrated, but you can't sit there. I mean, that's why I started the organization, because I was tired of being frustrated and angry at the injustice in so much of American society. And I was like, okay, I want to do something. I figured out something to do in the current climate. I'm sure I'll figure out something to do in the future climate, whatever that looks like. I don't think it's going to be anything that would put me in jail, but who knows what laws they're going to write besides just abortion. You know, they signaled a lot of things. You know, I think in Clarence Thomas's opinion with the Dobbs decision was we should go after birth control. The Texas federal court said that you can't give birth control to minors without their parents consenting.
Oh, yeah. I've been following that one really, really closely.
Texas teens now need their parents' permission to receive birth control. The ruling states that Title X program violates state law and parental rights.
Not to dive too much into a whole different situation, but what stuck out to me is that he said that he has the right to raise his daughters under God. And I just feel like that is kind of where we're going. It starts with Roe, and that foundation of Roe and abortion care as healthcare has fallen, and they're just going to keep chipping away.
The threat to all these things, no matter what creative solutions we come at this with, still working within the legal framework that's there, is that a lot of these cases that are being put up to the courts are not based on any harms that are actually being caused to anyone, whether it be the case of this father, like you said, or the mifepristone case. It's being brought by doctors who have never provided abortion pills to anyone, but don't think anybody else should, and say they actually aren't even claiming they're being harmed.
I think what we're getting at here is that your network of 1,400 pilots are willing to offer their time and resources is incredible, but this isn't a solution. Like, this is not a long-term solution. How does that make you feel that you know that, like, this is just a Band-Aid to this greater problem that we have?
I used to look at practical support as being a Band-Aid. And I was working with another colleague on some tech projects for abortion access, made that comment. And she's like, no, Mike, you've got it wrong. We're not trying to fix the current system. We're making a new system. Because of how fundamentally broken it is, you can't fix it. What we have to do is build something new. We're starting to have conversations with midwife organizations about what it might look like to get midwives out to communities where these states and places that have abortion restrictions have lost their OBs and other folks. People still need prenatal care. And so we're starting to talk about what else can we do to increase access to healthcare for people that have been affected by abortion bans and all these other things. Even though they might never seek an abortion, they still have lost access to healthcare because of abortion laws.
My last question, can we clone you? Get one of you in every single facet of America's problems here. Is that a possibility, you think?
What I will say is that one of the reasons that I do this work is because during Me Too, I was supporting a woman colleague of mine, mostly with moral support. And she was like, you could actually speak up more publicly and do more as opposed to just stand here next to me and behind me. I'm like,
she busted your balls.
She did a little bit. And so I think to me, I take that message to all men is don't look at the issues around abortion. Don't look at the issues around trans rights. If you're white, don't look at the issues around, how Black people are treated in our country. Or if you're not an immigrant, don't ignore how immigrants are treated, because it does affect all of us, whether we're from some marginalized population or not. So men, white people, get off your butts, find out what you can do, get out there and do something.
We don't even have to produce any more podcasts. We're just going to put that on a loop every single episode. Men, get off your butts. So if a pilot wants to get involved or people want to donate time, money, where could they find Elevated Access?
So they can find our website at elevatedaccess.org. You can also find our social media accounts there. We're most active on Instagram. We don't use Twitter anymore, like a lot of people. Also, if you're not a pilot, maybe you have limited funds, you don't have much to donate. There's also on our Ways to Help page, there's a flyer that you can print out to put around at airports to help us find more pilots, as well as some other ideas. Our website has a lot of information on how to get involved.
When I went to your website and I saw the first video, it was kind of like an infomercial for Elevated Access, and it had this super upbeat music, and it was so uplifting, and it had all these great stats about all the people you're helping.
Less than 18 months since our founding, Elevated Access has already recruited over 1,350 volunteer pilots.
I was gonna go fly today anyway, so I might as well go fly and get somebody the care that they need.
I just hesitate to smile at a thing like this. I'm happy that you're doing this. It's just the fact that you have to do this is wild to me.
I think there would be lots of opportunities to just be negative and talk about it from a negative perspective. I even go on my own rants at times. One of the things that we didn't realize was going to be a benefit of the organization is that a lot of people tell us we've given them hope that it won't be so bad, because when people see just how far somebody else is willing to go to help them, it brings a lot of hope and positivity into the movement. And I think that's a extra benefit of the work. And so sure, if our video seems very upbeat and positive, it's because that's the message we want to send.
It's definitely not a knock on it.
It's easy to be downer on this stuff because it is definitely difficult and challenging and frustrating and annoying and all the negative emotions that come with it.
It is nice to know that there are good, well-meaning people out there.
I think well-meaning is a good word. Find your local practical support organization, find your local abortion fund, find your local pride center, and go to them and say, what do you need? What can I do? We're always up for trying to find those creative solutions.
Mike, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for joining the American Resolution. And hey, if you want to watch this episode, you can find the videos on YouTube at The American Resolution. And also join the conversation by following us at American Resolution Pod on every social platform. This podcast is a production of Rat Trap Entertainment in partnership with Sheila Conlon and Cabana 14 Productions. Produced by Heather Gardner and Lauren Gardner with limited support from their cat, that little bastard.